In 1976, disco music was at its peak across the United States. Nightclubs were packed, lights were flashing, and people were dancing to a new sound that felt fresh and exciting. Around this time, a track was released that quickly climbed the charts and became a #1 hit on Billboard. It played everywhere, on the radio, in parties, and across television. People loved it, danced to it, and played it on repeat. But there was something almost no one realized. The melody they were enjoying wasn't new at all. In fact, it had been written nearly 168 years earlier by a composer who was no longer alive. The song was a fifth of Beethoven, released in 1976 by Walter Murphy. On the surface, it sounded like a typical disco track, fast tempo, energetic rhythm, and a beat designed for dancing. But hidden inside it was something much older. The core melody of the track was directly inspired by Ludwig van Beethoven's famous Symphony No. 5. And that's where the story becomes fascinating, because this wasn't just a remix. It was a transformation that connected two completely different centuries. If we go back to the year 1808 in Vienna, Austria, Beethoven was working on what would become one of the most iconic compositions in history, Symphony No. 5. Europe at the time was filled with tension and uncertainty, and Beethoven poured those emotions into his music. The opening notes, da-da-da-dum, became one of the most recognizable musical phrases ever created. Many believe it represents fate knocking at the door. It wasn't just a sequence of notes. It was a powerful emotional experience that resonated deeply with listeners. Fast forward to the 1970s, when the music industry was evolving rapidly. Disco culture was rising, and artists were experimenting with new sounds by blending different genres. During this era, Walter Murphy came up with an unusual idea. What if classical music could be turned into disco? It was a bold and risky concept because classical and disco belonged to completely different worlds. But Murphy took Beethoven's Symphony No. 5, increased the tempo, added a strong dance beat, and transformed it into something entirely new. The result was unexpected. A fifth of Beethoven didn't just remain an experiment, it became a massive hit. In 1976, it reached the #1 spot on the Billboard Hot 100. Millions of people danced to it without realizing they were actually listening to a modern version of Beethoven's composition. It was a moment where history and modern culture merged seamlessly, yet most listeners never noticed the connection. This raises an important question. Was this stealing? From a legal perspective, the answer is no. Beethoven's compositions are in the public domain, meaning anyone can use them freely. But from a creative standpoint, the situation is more complex. Murphy didn't simply copy the music, he reimagined it. He took an old idea and presented it in a completely new context. The melody remained the same, but the energy changed. The structure stayed familiar, but the audience was entirely different. And this exact approach is still used in modern music today. Even now, many songs are not entirely original. They are inspired by the past, sometimes subtly, sometimes clearly. Chord progressions, melody patterns, and emotional builds often repeat across generations. That's why you sometimes hear a new song and feel like you've heard it before. That feeling isn't random. It's a connection to something older, something hidden beneath the surface. What makes this even more fascinating is the fact that Beethoven created his music in a world without recording technology, without the internet, and without a global audience. Yet his work continues to influence music centuries later. His ideas have traveled through time, adapted into new forms, and reached millions of listeners in completely different eras. That's not just influence, it's a kind of immortality. Beethoven didn't just create music, he created patterns and emotions that continue to be reused and rediscovered. So the next time you hear a song that feels strangely familiar, don't ignore that feeling. It might not be entirely new. It might be a modern version of something much older, reshaped for a different generation. Because sometimes songs aren't stolen, they're reborn.